CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. China begins 3 days of military exercises off Taiwan. The drills followed Taiwan's leader's visit to the United States. Our other headlines, tensions running high in the Middle East after 3 people are killed in attacks in Israel and the West Bank. Access to abortion drugs in the United States is thrown into confusion after contradictory rulings from 2 judges. And breaking their fast by breaking bread together. We're in Cairo to see the largest Ramadan food table in Egypt. China has begun 3 days of military exercises in the Taiwan Straits. The Chinese military says the live fire drills are a warning against what it calls pro-independence forces in Taiwan. This comes after Taiwan's leader met the United States House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California during a 10-day visit to America. Our correspondent Wu Bin reports now from Pingtan Island across the Straits from Taiwan.
Right, so the military drills have already started Saturday morning and will last from Saturday to Monday. And the spokesperson of China's National Defense Ministry said that this is a serious warning to Taiwan's separatist forces and their provocation activity together with external forces. The spokesperson also said that this is a necessary action to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. And today's the first day, and the Eastern Theater Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army said that today's operation focused on testing the ability to seize the right to control the sea, air and information under the support of the joint warfare system, and that the task force is organizing simultaneous battle patrols around the island of Taiwan and shaping what it calls an all-round deterrence posture around the island. And besides the condemnation and the countermeasures from the Chinese mainland, the meeting between Tsai and McCarthy also received criticism and condemnation from within the Taiwan island. More than 50 parties and organizations, they have strongly condemned the meeting. They say that the meeting undermined efforts for China's peaceful reunification, deliberately provoked the mainland and escalate tensions of the Taiwan Straits.
An Italian tourist has been killed and 5 others injured when a car rammed into a crowd in the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. The authorities said the car ploughed into a group of people near a popular cycling and walking route along the seafront. They said the driver was Israeli Arab who was shot dead by the police. Well, the incident came hours after 2 British Israeli sisters were shot dead in the occupied West Bank. Their mother was also badly injured in the attack near a West Bank settlement. Tensions have been high since Israeli police raided the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem during Ramadan prayers, prompting rocket fire from Gaza and Lebanon into Israel. Well, as well as the upsurge in violence, the Israeli government's also facing further protests over its plan to curb the judiciary. Demonstrators are calling for the proposals to be scrapped in what's become a major domestic crisis for the country. Our correspondent Stephanie Freed explained why the protests are continuing, despite the government saying it's putting those proposals on hold.
At the end of April, a freeze on moving forward on overhauling what they say, the protesters say, is an overhaul of the judiciary. That freeze ends, and then the government has said more or less that they're going to go back to pushing through this change of the judicial system. The protesters say that they are very much aware of what's been happening here at Al-Aqsa Mosque with the violence, with the killings, very tenuous situation right now, the rocket fire, and the security is again, it's tenuous. So they're going to hold a moment of silence to commemorate in honor or memory of the people who have been killed. At the beginning of the protests, the expectation is that tonight's countrywide protests won't be as large as they have been for the past, this is week 14, so over the past few months. But yes, the feeling is keep the pressure on until the government drops this plan to overhaul the legal system in Israel, and that's why the protests continue.
And there's been an upsurge in violence in the region this week. How is the government responding to this?
They've held a few emergency meetings. There was an announcement a day ago that reservists would be called up, mainly reservists, and this is by the military chief saying that reservists mainly that deal with air defense systems, attack drones, fighter jet pilots, leading to the understanding that possibly there was anticipation of further mortar rocket fire from Lebanon or from Gaza. That was an announcement. Will it come to fruition? Sometimes these announcements are made as deterrents. As well, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he has called up all reserve border policemen and women. The caveat there is the violent scenes that we saw inside of Al-Aqsa Mosque with Palestinians being beaten by policemen who had stormed the mosque. Those were border police officers. So calling up reservist border police people, will that be a positive thing? That remains to be seen.
A judge in Texas has suspended the long-standing approval of an abortion pill widely used in the United States. Mifepristone has been in use for more than 2 decades and is given to women in most medical abortions. Another judge in Washington immediately issued a contradictory ruling, preserving the pill's use in 17 states and the District of Columbia. This means the issue is now likely to end up in the Supreme Court. Vice President Kamala Harris warned the Texas ruling set a dangerous precedent. Well, our correspondent Tony Waterman explains the judge's reasoning for putting a hold on the Food and Drug Administration's approval of mifepristone.
In his 67-page ruling, Judge Matthew Kaczmarek sided almost entirely with the anti-abortion doctors that had filed this lawsuit. He said that when the FDA approved mifepristone 23 years ago, that it acquiesced on legitimate safety concerns and that it had succumbed to political pressure. He also said that in the decades since, the drug had resulted in many deaths and life-threatening adverse reactions. Now, medical experts would strongly disagree with this. Mifepristone has repeatedly been shown to be safe and effective, and these complications are exceedingly rare. In fact, it is more safe to take than penicillin and Viagra. But this ruling is absolutely unprecedented. You have a judge overruling the decisions of well-trained scientists and doctors at the FDA, and it could undermine the credibility of the institution, which is responsible for assessing the efficacy and safety of all the medications that are used in the United States and all the medical devices that are used in the country. It also raises some very big questions about the safety of other drugs that are on the market already, things like contraceptives or the morning after pill, or even the second drug that is used in a medication of abortion, which is misoprostol. So these are very serious, big questions that are now being raised. Are they going to be allowed to stay on the market as well if there are other lawsuits that are filed? The judge also dredged up this 150-year-old federal law that bans the mailing of any sort of drug or device that can be used in an abortion. And that could have very serious implications because during the pandemic, the FDA started allowing the mailing of abortion pills. And this has become sort of the norm now in the United States. And it is a lifeline. More than half of the abortions in the United States are medication abortions. So this has some very serious implications. Mifepristone itself is not going to immediately be flying off the shelves. The judge has given a week for appeals to be filed, and that process has already been started.
Megan Ranney is an emergency doctor and deputy dean of Brown University School of Public Health. I asked her who's right, the critics who claim this drug is risky, or the medics who say it's safe.
It is totally safe. The combination of mifepristone plus misoprostol, the 2 medications that are used most commonly for medication abortion, are no more dangerous than having a miscarriage, and in fact, may be slightly more safe than a natural miscarriage, certainly are safer than the complications and risk of death from carrying a pregnancy to term. They are also safer, not just from the physical side, but but also from the emotional and mental side. We have 5 decades of evidence that the best protection for a woman's mental health is having access to safe and legal abortion. Being forced to carry a pregnancy to term has tremendous downstream negative consequences, not just for the pregnant person, but for their family. The removal of this option would have devastating consequences for women nationwide.
So what does access to medication like this mean for women across the United States?
So as the previous reporter noted, approximately 50% of abortions in the United States are done through medication rather than through a procedure. Access to medication allows a person to take the medications to initiate abortion in the privacy and comfort of their own home. It obviously increases access for folks who may be far in distance from a clinic that can perform those procedural abortions, and it removes stigma and so allows folks to pursue abortion if it is the right choice for them and their family without having to walk through a wall of protesters, to deal with transportation difficulties, or to take time off of work.
Who will be at most risk, and what if this is no longer available?
So those who will be at most risk are those who are also, unfortunately, at highest risk of unplanned pregnancy. So folks who are minority, who are lower income, who live in rural areas, folks who are younger, and of course, people who are subject to domestic violence. We know that domestic violence goes up during an unplanned pregnancy, is one of the largest threats to a woman's life during pregnancy. And should a domestic violence abuser know that a woman is pursuing abortion, it can often escalate the level of violence in a relationship. So I worry about all of those populations who are already at highest risk. They will be put at higher risk should access to this medication be removed.
This issue seems to go around in circles in the United States, doesn't it? I mean, it comes less than a year since the historic overturn of that landmark case, Roe versus Wade. I mean, how worried are you over the direction of women's reproductive rights and liberties and the debate and how the direction it's taking in the United States?
As a woman, as a mother of a daughter, but also as a physician, I am tremendously concerned because, let's be clear, abortion is health care, and reproductive rights are part of women's health. I am also worried, though, for the larger profession of medicine. We rely on the FDA to use science to approve medications. The FDA also has been known to remove approval of medications. Just this week, they removed approval of a medication that had been allowed to prevent preterm birth because the science accumulated and they realized that the risks were greater than the benefits. Putting those decisions in the hands of judges overturns our ability to rely on the FDA, our ability to count on approved medications and devices, and will be destructive not just for women's health, but for all Americans' health.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, quite literally falling off a cliff. People living on the UK's east coast fear their homes could soon disappear because of the eroding coastline.
Roger, Ricky, last clear.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and this idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Oh, no.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
This week on Razor, how saving one species can save an ecosystem. On the trail of European bison.
We have here, as you can see, a nice trail through thick vegetation here, which is done by the bison. It's one of the roads they have in nature. They basically create these pathways through thick vegetation where other smaller animals can't cross.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Tensions run high in the Middle East after 3 people are killed in attacks in Israel and the West Bank. Our other headlines: China begins 3 days of military exercises off Taiwan. The drills followed Taiwan's leader's visit to the United States. And access to abortion drugs in the US is thrown into confusion after contradictory rulings from 2 judges. The British Home Office has admitted that it has no evidence to support one of its key claims used to justify stronger measures against migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats. In December, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, repeated a claim made by her predecessor that most of them were coming illegally as economic migrants. In reply to a Freedom of Information request, the UK government now says it has no such data. Our correspondent Paul Barber reports on the latest measures aimed at stopping the small boats.
Just after dawn on Wednesday, 8 men weigh down this dinghy crossing the English Channel from France. A British lifeboat picks them up and takes them into the port of Dover. Nearly 4,000 people have made the same journey in the first 3 months of this year, 200 of them on a single day this week alone. And for some of those likely to follow, this is what could await them. A barge called the Bibby Stockholm, leased by the British government, will accommodate 500 single adult males within months. The Interior Ministry says the vessel will provide basic and functional accommodation with healthcare and catering facilities. It's to be berthed off Portland in Dorset on England's south coast. The government is currently spending $7.5 million a day housing people awaiting asylum claims in hotels. Last year, more than 45,000 people arrived via small boats. In response, the UK government is introducing a new bill seeking to crack down on migration by branding all of those arriving this way criminals and then deporting them without any consideration of their asylum claims.
We can't have a situation we are collectively spending £6 million a day on hotels for illegal asylum seekers. That can't be right. I said that I would do everything I could to stop that and reduce the pressure on our communities from asylum seekers being in hotels, and that's what we're doing. We're bringing forward alternative sites like indeed the barge that we've announced today that will save us money and indeed reduce pressure on hotels.
Local lawmakers, even those from the governing Conservative Party, aren't keen on barges being in their backyards. Former military bases are also being lined up to hold migrants. Experts say there's no evidence these new arrangements will stop those who are determined to come from coming, and that there are other motivations for the move.
Among the kind of voter that the government is trying to attract, the sentence, let's put people in a military base, let's put people in an unused ferry, let's put people in a tent, are polling well. This is all very nice in the short term for the government. They got the headlines they want in the tabloid. But in practice, this is absolutely unlikely, completely unlikely to solve any kind of problem.
Winning votes and saving some taxpayer money, it may do. But campaigners for refugee rights say the human cost of the crisis cannot be so simply remedied. Paul Barber, CGTN, London.
Ukraine's president and security officials have held discussions about how to prevent military leaks. This is after secret documents detailing Western support for Kyiv reportedly appeared online. The New York Times said the United States and NATO plans to build up the Ukrainian military had been published. Kyiv has not confirmed the leak, and its military intelligence says it's possible that information in the posts was entirely fictitious. Iran is installing cameras in public places to crack down on women who flout the country's strict dress code. Police say women caught not wearing headscarves will be sent a text message warning them of the consequences. A growing number of Iranian women have been openly defying the rules after a young Kurdish woman died while in the custody of the morality police. Tesla has been served with a class action lawsuit after an investigation by the Reuters news agency found its staff had been sharing videos recorded by owners' car cameras. Among the videos shared on private group chats were a picture of a man approaching his car naked and a Tesla knocking a child off their bike. The class action is being brought by a Californian Tesla owner who's accusing the car maker of violating customers' privacy. It's 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement was signed, bringing an end to 30 years of violence in Northern Ireland, known as the Troubles. The agreement created a power-sharing administration at Stormont, and a ceremony was held there on Friday to mark the 25th anniversary. Those in attendance included Bertie Ahern, who was Ireland's Taoiseach at the time, who signed the historic agreement alongside UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Climate change campaigners estimate 80,000 houses in the UK could be lost to coastal erosion by the end of the century. A stretch of coast in eastern England is eroding faster than most, and people in one seaside village are calling for better protection for their community. Our correspondent Kitty Logan reports.
It's England's front line with the North Sea, and the future of this seaside community is hanging by a thread. The shoreline fast losing a battle with the elements. 2 years ago, the coastline was slowly retreating. Then, in March, a storm snatched a large section of the dunes. Strong waves hammering the shore, forcing seafront residents to flee. Authorities declared 5 homes so unsafe they had to be demolished.
People who've lost their homes have lost everything, so they're in bits. The people who are living behind them, watching it happen to their neighbours and friends, they know that's their future unless something's done.
Now those people are adapting to life on this road to nowhere.
It's fallen down through here, as you can see.
With infrastructure damaged and unstable ground, anyone living near the beach is worried.
The accelerated pace of this erosion is terrifying people here. In the last 2 years, several homes along here have been lost. This access road has collapsed, leaving other properties cut off and even more at serious risk.
Kevin Jordan had hoped to enjoy a quiet retirement by the sea, but he's quite literally living on the edge, and he can no longer count on basic services.
When I moved in about 12 years ago, I was told by experts that we had about 100 years here. I don't think they took climate change into consideration then.
Lance Martin was also shaken from his dream of seafront life. In 2 years, the sea crept in from here to here, leaving his home on the brink of collapse.
Oh, look at that.
Determined to cling on, Lance dragged his house to safety.
What we've managed to do with the help of the good people of Hemsby and a lot of good tradespeople is managed to pull it forward 3 metres from the edge of the dune, therefore saving the collapse and saving my house.
It's not over yet. He has to roll the house further back, but Lance has bought himself time and given others hope. The local authority is now hastily moving heavy rocks onto a section of beach, forming a short barrier to shore up the damaged road.
And the current plan is to put the rocks that you've just seen in the car park along the bottom here.
Campaigners say much more will be needed.
But it's 5% of our target area, nowhere near enough. It's going to protect a small area of road for a short time. But if it's not completed all the way along, then it won't do what we need.
There is a permit now to build a longer sea barrier, but coastal protection is costly and funding is another hurdle. And while erosion is part of history here, predicted sea level rise is adding urgency to the current crisis.
Higher, stronger tides, it's the sand being washed away. It's a cumulative effect. As the sand is gone, there's less and less and less to protect the village, so these things are going to accelerate.
The disruption is also damaging the tourist trade the village depends on. As the season approaches, the beach is closed off, the lifeboat service unable to launch. And while Hemsby is set on defying the odds, it's unlikely every home here can be saved. Kitty Logan, CGTN, on the Norfolk coast.
Around 4,000 people have come together in Egypt to break their fast at the country's biggest iftar table. It's an annual event that takes place in a Cairo neighbourhood midway through the fasting month of Ramadan. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports.
Tables and chairs are in place as the preparations come to the final moments to receive the thousands of Egyptians who will be here to eat at the largest iftar in Egypt. As you walk through the seemingly endless row of tables, you can see the food is being prepared by families living in this traditional Matariya neighborhood of Cairo.
It started when friends gathered to eat together in the street 10 years ago. Every year, more friends and neighbors join in, and it got bigger and spread to the side streets. Today, we are preparing food for 4,000 people coming from everywhere, not just from the Matariya.
This huge effort is based on voluntary work and donations. Even chefs are here doing their part free of charge.
It's a beautiful day returning to my alley between my friends and neighbors. It's a lot of work for a few days, but nice to be part of this gathering.
And there's no harm to give them a helping hand. Usually iftar tables are made by Egyptians to provide free food for the poor and passers-by after a long day of fasting. What makes this table unique than others is that it includes all walks of life. You've got families and friends, you've got Muslims and Christians coming here in a sign of solidarity and social unity. When everyone is ready, the countdown begins. It's time to break the fasting, eat, drink, and continue celebrations.
We wait for this day from the beginning of Ramadan till the 15th to meet in this fantastic day.
Even foreign visitors have joined in to enjoy the local atmosphere.
I wanted to come to Matariya because I wanted to see everybody eat all together as a community, and I also wanted to meet a lot of friendly Egyptians and feel the Ramadan spirit.
Organizers hope this annual Ramadan tradition continues throughout the year, not only for 1 month. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
As Pablo Picasso said himself, good artists copy, great artists steal. So you have to wonder what he'd make of this tribute to him on this, the 50th anniversary of his death. The Italian artist Dario Gamberin said he was inspired by a 1907 self-portrait by the late great Spanish artist to create this. The giant painting was carved out by a tractor on a 25,000 square metre plot of land in Verona. Now, how can the world avoid the demise of Credit Suisse and Silicon Valley Bank turning into a global meltdown? That's the subject of this weekend's agenda with Juliet Mann. That's the agenda right after the World Today at 16:30 GMT here on CGTN. The headlines again. China has begun 3 days of military exercises off Taiwan. The drills followed Taiwan's leader's visit to the United States. Our other headlines, tensions are running high in the Middle East after 3 people were killed in attacks in Israel and the West Bank. And access to abortion drugs in the United States has been thrown into confusion after contradictory rulings from 2 judges. And that is the World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. More news at the top of this hour. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.